And I'd just like to now introduce Bolanle, who will be giving the talk today. Bolanle Adebayo is a graduate research fellow, a PhD candidate at the Department of Agricultural Leadership and Community Education at Virginia Tech in the USA, studying issues at the nexus of community leadership development, agricultural development, farmer-to-farmer extension approach, and food systems leadership. And today she'll present her research study that seeks to explore the possibilities of leadership development and behaviors in citizen science initiatives such as tricot. So we're looking at the more social sciences side of the tricot approach today, which is really interesting to see.
Okay, so I will be presenting on phenomenological exploration of participation in citizen science and food system leadership. So as she introduced me, I'm Bolanle Adebayo. I'm a graduate research fellow at IIT, and I'm also a PhD candidate here at Virginia Tech. So I would like to say thank you for this opportunity to present my work. Thank you, Rachel, for the support before this day. And thank you, 1000 Farms, for sponsoring my research project. So the introduction, the background to my work is the benefit of food system. It's important for food security, is important for like livelihood development of farmers, of like the nation. But we know that it is often time faced with challenges such as climate change. We have other like a lot of issues, post-harvest loss and things like that. And many times scholars have made this approach to be, have criticized that most of these challenges have not been solved because of the traditional top-down approach to policy development, to agricultural development, and they recommend grassroots approaches where farmers are involved, like that involve a broader community of people, not even farmers, like consumers, among other value chain actors. So, but participation is not just without its challenges. Even though it has a lot of benefits, there's still always a lot of challenges in terms of like some people might be envious of some others. We know that, for example, there is this extension program that have been very popularized in developing country like my study area, which is Nigeria, and it's farmer to farmer approach. That also comes with a lot of like challenges in the terms of, even though it utilized like a social network advantage to increase community impact and participation, because even if you want participation during the implementation stage, not everybody will be included for cost constraints among others. So that is why, but it's still widening the gap, like inequality among farmers that we intend to even include in development projects. So which is one of the reasons why I'm studying this. But tricot, even though tricot is not like a farmer-to-farmer extension approach, but it still utilizes some of the tenets in the sense that not everybody is a tricot farmer. We have other people in the community that are not part of the project, not because like 1000 Farms or any other project doesn't want to include everybody, but for cost constraints, only few farmers like will be involved, even though tricot really utilize an inclusive approach to include like people more than even farmer to farmer approach. They nominate people that they want into the program, and I mean the community nominate people that they want into the program, which is much more better. But at the same time, because it doesn't include everybody, how do we make sure it doesn't perpetuate like silencing or inequality? And that's why I'm doing my study. So I want to make the conceptual framework of my study first before I go into like the problem statement, which is a little bit, I've shared that during my introduction. Which is so I'm looking into, I know that we have like people that are just pure scientists, but my project is about like social science aspect, and I had to, because it's exploratory, there are little study that looked at like the social aspects of citizen science. And that is why I'm utilizing more like a theory for this phase. Hopefully, when I'm done with my data collection, I'll be able to present the result of my work, which will be much more relatable to like the audience here. But now what I have is on the theoretical part, which is I just assume based on theory, social identity theory, which is like group membership, always lead to leader identity. And that's why I have like citizen science role can make people like being part of a group in a way have based on theory, have a way to confer on you like an identity that will make you act in certain way. So that's why I assume based on literature that social identity will lead to like leadership identity. So I will still test that, and that's why I'm doing the study. Then also being a member of a group based on social identity theory also gives you like a social status in the society. There are some people we know that once they are part of maybe a Rotary club or something like that, we just assume they are this type of people. So I believe that that might happen too, like from theory, that might happen to people that are citizen scientists, like tricot farmers. Maybe in the community, people start seeing them in a way. And so there is this theory, which is called leadership identity construction theory, we say that people grant people a leader identity. So if they see you as they see you being part of a group, they might think in a way that you are you have high knowledge, they can ask you questions. So I'm looking at leadership, but not in the sense of skill, more like relational leadership. So do people ask them more questions? How does that even start make them seeing themselves? Do they feel like they have a voice? Do they think that they can give back to the scientists what other people, not just what they think, what other people in the community or consumers want? So how does that make them start seeing themselves? Then how do people in the community, how do they see them? Do they confer on them like a leadership identity? This is still theory. Hopefully when the result come out, I can explain better. So that is the concept of my work. So it's based on social identity theory in the sense that you being a member of a group, how does it translate to how people see you and how you see yourself? So how people see you is what I refer to as leadership identity. How you see yourself is leader identity, but how people see you in the society and what they do with what you have is the full system leadership identity. So that's what I'm looking at for my study. So over the years, participation in I've explained this in the introduction. Most of the benefit of development intervention is always, especially when it comes to like genetics, breeding, is always focused on like the agricultural innovation, but we have more to gain. And I'm very appreciative of this approach because I was looking at participatory work, and for breeding, it's very rare. And I like that 1,000 farmers is into this. So what are the social benefits of having agricultural information, such as role in diversion of innovation, which is very popular in social science, and information sharing, then community feedback. So my work is just to know the social benefit. That's why I'm not stopping at looking at what it does to farmers, like in the sense of how they see themselves, more knowledgeable, but more about like the social impact of the work. So that's what this is all about. And I noticed that we have a lot of citizen science projects, but not breeding. I mean, in farming, it's very, very few. But at the same time, most citizen science projects is always about data collection from the participant, not necessarily concerned about the citizen scientists. So, but that's why I think this is very much worth studying. So the purpose of my research work will be to explore the citizen scientists like personal and social identity as a result of their participation and the implication on like food system leadership. And I will be exploring two major questions because it's an exploratory study, and that's why it's utilizing the qualitative approach. So I'll be exploring like two questions: how, if at all, is participation in citizen science perceived to contribute to leadership identity development, which is focused on like the farmer, how does it develop their leadership? Then the second part will be on the the community, I mean the society. So how Ivato is participation, perceived to contribute to food system leadership. So what does it make them do in the community? So the first is about themselves, how they see themselves. Did it develop like their communication skill and things like that? It might not necessarily be communication. So I'm not going to put words into their mouth, but I expect them to share what their experience is. Then what does it make them do in the community is the second part. So I believe my work is significant. I will not be able to go into that for time. So I've explained the theoretical part, and I will not go into that, except to just reemphasize leadership is beyond skill, and it's more about social interaction. And that's why I know we might not have a lot of leadership scholar here, so I will not go into details. But we have there is a concept in leadership, which is leadership as practice, that sees leadership beyond skill, but leadership is expressed in social interaction. And that is why the second part of my research question will be about what happens in the social interaction. Do people think these people are leaders? Do they ask them question? What do they do? What occurs in like their interaction with other people in the community? Are they envious of them based on what we've seen in different types of farmer to farmer extension? So that is why I'll be looking at that. So the methodology, it will be utilizing tricot, which is a case. I really like tricot. When I was thinking about like citizen science, I have come across like reading on this, and I decided this is going to be like the case for my study because of the inclusive approach to selection of even the farmers. So I feel in a way, rather than just being like a farmer to farmer extension approach of integrating community, I think this is more inclusive in the sense that people the community nominated these people to be part of the project and things like that. So I really like the approach. So farmers plants like 3 types of varieties on the crop, and they give feedback. So the data collection will be interview schedule. Like I said, the work is exploratory, which hopefully even after my PhD, I can look into more other aspects in the sense of like other method. But for now, it's going to be interview just to explore what are the social experiences, personal and social experiences of tricot farmers. And it's going to be in person. It will be audio recorded in participant language to allow for meaning, because I am taking a social constructivist approach to my research, which prioritizes like meaning in language, which are often expressed in languages. So I'm not going to be using a lot of the tricot community, so I will only be working with Osun State. Depending on saturation, I only wrote 12 participants because most literature will be like you achieve saturation for interviews when you reach like 12 participants. And the text will be data, the data will be text, because I'm a social scientist. We work with like getting interviews or surveys, but this is interview, and the data is not like the scientist, is just text. And I'll be coding in participant language just to preserve the meaning. But of course, I'll write it and present to you and every other group like publication in English, but hopefully with the consultation of an independent translator to make sure that participants' words are still preserved. So I will use a thematic analysis for coding of my teams. For coding, then I'll categorize the code into teams. So that will be my data analysis method. Then the validity for the working core research is different from that of quant. So I'll use auditory, like all the process of my research will be well documented. Then I know that I'm also like in Nigerian, also I've worked with farmers, so I'll always think about like how does my own personal life apply to this work. to kind of segregate my own meaning from what participants are saying. Then also expert review, like my peers, they will look at how I code. Then also people on my committee. Then at the end of the day, I would also share some of what I find with the participants so that they know. It's to check if they think what I've written that fits in what they say or their experiences. Then also like describe in detail during my analysis what this is all about. So thank you. If you have any question, I would also put my email in the chat. So Bolanle, I'm a student at Virginia Tech. If you Google that, you will find me there. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn too as Bolanle Adebayo. And this is my email. You can reach out to me for questions or contributions. So thank you.
Thank you, Bolanle. Thank you so much for your short and interesting presentation about what you're doing. I just wondered if you could tell us, because you were mentioning to me before the webinar started, what your plans are to collect your data for the next year or so. Can you just tell everybody
Uh,
a bit about that?
Okay, so I plan to go for data. I've been working with Dr. Bella Tikin and he's been very helpful. So we plan on going for data collection this month, at the end of this month. Yeah. Tentatively April 28th. And by the time I'm back, because this is still theoretical, so by the time I'm back, I will analyze and hopefully I'm able to present to the whole group again what my findings are concerning my work.
Okay. Yeah, that would be great. So I'll open the floor to any questions. Just raise your virtual hand if you have a question, or you can put it into the chat if you're a bit shy. Maybe I can start off. I have a question for you. You mentioned that you'll be in Osun State doing your data collection, and you had put 12 participants. I wasn't sure if that was 12 people or 12 different locations. But I was just wondering, while you were talking, what the influence of culture might be on the answers of people, as often identity is really wrapped into local culture, and how will you kind of disentangle that with your results?
Okay, so I'm going to be asking questions about culture. So it's also part of my work. And I understand that culture in a way influences identity, which is also part of the reason why I'm doing this because most of the female, because the tricot selected farmers based on ability to also process because it's not just about like production. So people that are into production, then also processing, we makes a lot of people like which makes a lot of people more about female, like a lot of tricot farmers are female. And as a result of that, leadership might mean a lot. They might not really see themselves based on my experience as in Nigeria. That's why I said I will always reflect about my own idea and what they say. So based on my experience, it might affect leadership because they might not see themselves as leader. And that is why most of the questions I'm asking, I'm not going to be mentioning like leadership straight up to the farmers because it's not about I'm not concerned about the title or position. I'm concerned about the process and interaction. So I will not really mention that so that it's the cultural aspect of leadership will be in a little way silent, hopefully, from my findings. But I would not say, oh, do you see yourself as a leader? Because they might not want to associate with leadership based on like culture. So it should just be like, what do you do? Do people ask you questions? So I'm the one that when I'm analyzing it, because before I went into this constructive path, I believe I'm like a critical realist. So kind of just putting things together. So I will be the one to know, okay, this is leadership based on the literature, but not assign leadership to my questions during interaction. So that might silence a little bit of the cultural part.
Okay. Thanks very much for that. I have a question from Gracia Benavente on the chat. She says, "Hi, Bolanle. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question. What factors do you think may motivate farmers to engage in citizen science experiments, and what challenges or barriers might prevent their participation?"
Okay, so I feel like the factors to motivate might be another study, and I think I have a question on that, which I intend to find out. But I know from literature it might just be like maybe interest, agency, like wanting to make their voice known. I don't. I know that they also gain some things from participation. That might also be, but it might just be that because they want to participate, they want to help the community, they want to maybe for social prestige. And there is a question during my interview that I mean my on my interview protocol that will address what are the motivations to
Mhm,
participation. So hopefully I find out more. But
mhm,
based on literature, it's mostly like social prestige. They might have other things they gain, maybe social benefits. It might also be like monetary, if or maybe they just want to know more, maybe knowledge or any other
mhm,
thing. But hopefully I'll find out more during my study.
mhm. And what about the challenges that might prevent them from participating? What do you think they
Okay,
might be?
so because it's a social group, and one of those things I saw was they for the leadership part, they call something implicit theory of leadership, which is people ascribe like external influences on leadership. People ascribe leadership to be somehow like how people see some people will determine if they will ascribe to you like leadership. Some people just don't want to uh be a leader because all their experience of leadership are bad. So it might be a challenge because maybe if some people that have been like tricot farmers in the past, or maybe they have been part of development projects and it's exploitative in the sense that other people in the community did not benefit, and it kind of create like a social, like the inequality we talked about, or more like envy or something like that. They might not want to associate with such because they want to be part of their community. They don't want to be excommunicated from their community. They still want to be part. So that might be challenges to that, apart from maybe extra commitments among others.
Mhm, mhm. That makes sense. There's a second part to Gracia's question. She asks, what indicators would you use to identify and measure leadership behavior?
Okay, so I'm not, so this is still, hopefully, I don't know what my career will look like after. That's why this is explorative for now. I'm still exploring the concept of leadership within like citizen science. So I'm not using any survey or something like indicator. It will be what they say I will use to analyze. So I'm doing in vivo coding. So I mentioned that during my analysis. I'm using participants' words. Of course, we have traits of leadership, some things like communicating, answering other people's questions, social influence, and things like that. But I want it to be about what they say. So they know. So it's a constructivist part. They know the meaning of leadership to them, even though they might not say this is leadership. So I'm not using any indicator. I found like a leadership identity skill, but while presenting in school, yeah, they were like, it might not be applicable to the concept of leadership is broad. It means things to like different things to people. So it might not be applicable to the concept of like Nigerian setting because the scale was created in the US. So I won't be using indicators like in terms of like
Mhm.
survey. So what comes out of my study will be based on what participants say.
Okay, thank you. So I've got two more questions. Well, I've got one hand raised. I'll get to that after I ask this other question from Jakob in the chat. He says, in tricot in Nigeria, sampling tries to increase the diversity in the group. How will that affect identity and leadership across a pre-existing group? Would you be able to detect if this has positive or negative effects on social interaction?
Sorry, please come in. Like, I got a little distracted.
Did
Please,
you,
can you repeat?
can you see the chat? Maybe you can read it. That would be, or Jakob, maybe you'd like to just ask directly.
Yeah, I can also ask directly.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I wrote it in the chat. So in Nigeria, the sampling is actually done by identifying existing groups in each of the communities, right?
Yes.
And then people sample from each of these groups. So I wonder if the leadership is leadership over whom, right? Does this leadership stay in each of the groups? So say if you have a group of migrants and a group of people who have more permanent like land rights in the society, in the local community, whether the leadership is that is being fostered by tricot, by participating in the trial, whether that really extends also to reaching out across these divides. So leadership, of course, is not just an individual trait, right? It's actually also about social interaction. So I really wondered like how you're going to look at these kinds of aspects of like leadership in terms of this kind of social capital of bridging, what people call bridging social capital as well. And if you have that, yeah, if you are going to really focus on that as well in your study, I'm curious to.
Okay. Yes, initially, even when I reached out to Dr. Bella, I told him I wanted to do a social network to know like the social network effects of this, but I'm not doing that because of time. So my committee were like, I shouldn't, my chair. But that might be after this study in the long run. I would really want to look into the social network effect. But all the questions I'll be asking them will be since your participation. I make sure since your participation in tricot. So I made sure I added that to all my questions so that it doesn't just depict their own, because I know they are part of group or I mean social group before and they can have like position, but I want it to relate to tricot. I want it to relate to participation in citizen science. So I have a question so that since your participation in citizen science, does it change how people start seeing you? So things like that, just to make sure it's directed to this particular project, not necessarily any other thing they are part of before. So
Okay, thank you for your answer. We'll go over now to Ayatigbo. Hope I said your name correctly. You can go ahead and unmute and ask your question. Turn on your webcam if you can.
Okay.
So we can see you. There we
Good
go.
afternoon.
Hello.
Well done, thank you. My name is Oluwatoyin. I'm calling from Sirat. So I want to ask a question, and it's regarding what kind of statistical tools do you intend to use for your study? Because of certainly it looks like there will be more of categorical data that you have. But even with categorical data, there are many tools that can be used statistically. So do you have idea of such kind of tools that you use for explaining your data? Thank you.
So this is not a survey. So I wouldn't, it's even though I'm categorizing in a way, it's more about the word. So I will just use Atlas I or in vivo qualitative analytical tool. But for qualitative research, the researcher is like the tool. So I'm not going to be using any statistical instrument except for just to help me to maybe analyze my words. I might use in vivo, but I'm still the one that will do the analysis. That's the nature of qualitative research. Rachel, I guess you're muted.
Sorry. Any other questions or comments for Bolanle? You'll see her email address there on the slide if you want to get in touch with her, further discussion or questions. Okay. Great. Well, I'll just wrap things up, but I wanted to thank you, Bolanle, very much for the interesting perspective on the social aspects of tricot. And we, of course, wish you all the luck with your field work that's coming up and the rest of your PhD, and look forward to hearing about the results very soon. So if I
Thank
can
you.
just, you're welcome. If I can just ask you to unshare your screen so I can share mine. Thanks. Okay. And just to wrap up, I'd like to, oops, there we go, remind everybody of our online resources, our Thousand Farms website. It's had lots of interesting news, resources, and other information. You can get news on our social media about events, and we'll be having these webinars every 2 weeks. So our next one will be, I think, probably at the end of April. And then also our community of practice website. And that's where you can find the videos to these webinars if you happen to miss one. Yeah, that's it. Lastly, I want to thank you all for joining us today, and very thankful to Bolanle for sharing her study with us. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.